Hello and welcome to the programme which looks at the Holy Land. I am Paul Calvert. Psalm 90 verse 1 from the New King James Bible says this: Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations.
I'm with Shmuel Bowman from Operation Lifeshield. Now, Shmuel, what is Operation Lifeshield?
It's such a great question because we've actually gone through some evolution. This is actually our 20th year.
Wow.
We started in 2006. And as a response to the Second Lebanon War that was taking place in northern Israel, and where Hezbollah had, for a period of 1 month, had really wreaked havoc. At the time, we were talking about, I know it's laughable today, but we were talking about approximately 100 rockets a day. And I mean, that was terrible, but we're in a very different situation these days, aren't we? We're talking about 300,000 people were displaced in northern Israel. I remember that very, very well because I live in the Jerusalem area, and people were opening up their homes to total strangers who couldn't live in the north. The only people who remained in the north really were people who didn't have the wherewithal, the financial wherewithal, or even health to move. And so I actually was in a situation where I was actually going up to northern Israel under rocket attack. My late father was with me on one of those trips. I remember we had a really great time, and all the cars were kind of coming the other direction. They were all heading south, and we were heading north along army vehicles, and we were delivering humanitarian supplies, food, medicine, that sort of thing. I remember a conversation happened between just regular citizens. I mean, we're talking about regular people having a chat with the Army, Home Front Command, it was called Civil Defense, and saying, how can we help? What a concept, eh? How could we help? How could we get involved? And the Army said, well, we're realizing that this is a very different kind of a war, and this may very well be, Paul, a change in the things to come. Boy, were they ever prophetic, eh? And the fact is they said, no more are people going to be moving into bomb shelters for long periods of time, but people need to continue with their lives. They need to go to work. They need to go to the gym. I don't know. They need to take their kids to school. We're going to need something which doesn't exist right now, shelters that are accessible, that you can go into for a short period of time, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, simple places, and then when the danger's over, go back to your normal life, or as we say, live as normal as possible in an abnormal situation. And thus was born Operation Lifeshield. And the reason I say there's been an evolution, Paul, is because we now actually go by the name Lifeshield. We've dropped the name Operation because, right, as you'll agree, the word operation denotes a certain time-bound, short-term burst of activity. 19 and a half years later, we're past the part of it being a short-term burst. We are here for the long haul, and we have seen over the past 19 and a half, going on 20 years, we've seen how living in a very dangerous neighborhood is just something we need to get used to. And living with bomb shelters is just a part of daily life. And Lifeshield today, 20 years on, or 19 and a half years on, has become part of the fabric of Israeli life. That's just, parents are choosing the kindergartens they're sending their children to based on whether or not there are adequate bomb shelters there. We're literally at the table. We sit at the table with the security chiefs, with the leaders of communities, and develop strategically plans for how to keep their communities safe and how to really step in the gap where the government either can't or won't be involved. And that's where we are today. Today, Lifeshield is not just about shelters. We're also about other security projects as well. Anything that has to do with keeping people, civilians, safe, and I would even say comforted.
So you're coming up to your 20 years. Are you going to be doing anything special for the 20 years, special appeals for the 20 years? And are you really, really busy now up to that 20th year?
Oh, yeah. To answer your last question first, we've never been busier. We've actually been, as you can probably imagine, things really took an uptick after October 7th, 2023. And we've been nonstop since then. Obviously, with the current campaign with Iran, that has obviously intensified our work as well, as people understand that you simply can't function without having a proper shelter close by. So we've been even busier. But since October 7th, 2023, Look, that was a real wake-up call for Israel. As a friend of mine, a security chief in southern Israel, said, on October the 7th, right, we forgot to treat our enemies like our enemies, right? So it was a wake-up call. We were living very much in this never land, that maybe if we could just keep the Gazans, happy with good salaries, good jobs, access to work in Israel, turning a blind eye to the tons and tons and tons of cement and concrete materials that were being flooded into Gaza. I mean, I would stand there at the border, on the Gaza-Israeli border, in awe, as, no exaggeration, dozens and dozens of truckloads of cement are just pouring into Gaza from Israel. This is leading prior to October 7th, and thinking, by this point in time, you should see skyscrapers. You should see, auditoriums and, what do you call them? Sports arenas, you know what I'm saying? And of course, that's true, but it was all happening under the ground, right?
You were looking up and you should have been looking down.
Right. So we were all turning like a blind eye to all this, and October 7th was a real wake-up call. And ever since then, we've just been nonstop. As far as getting ready for our 20th anniversary, yeah, we've got some cool things going on. We've got some really good merch happening. We've got our creative director who's really on top of that. She's working with a team for all sorts of merchandise and things like that, which will just kind of move our brand even more forward. Celebrating, it's very funny. I'll tell you something. It always strikes me as funny. People always say, "Oh, it's really too bad that there are bomb shelters." But when I understand what they're saying, what they're really saying is, it's too bad we're living in a situation where people need to, right, go to bomb shelters. I understand what's behind that simple comment, where, too bad that there has to be bomb shelters. But my response is, thank God there are bomb shelters. Thank God we have that. I got a request today from somebody in Dubai, in the Emirates, because there are no bomb shelters in the Emirates, and they're getting pounded by Iran, and they have literally nowhere to go. Okay, you see entire floors of buildings in Dubai being totally wiped away. I mean, there's nothing. No one built it like. As a matter of fact, I think they're building it out of sand over there because it just looks really devastating. And so we actually got a request from someone in Dubai. We're not able to fulfill that because our mandate is to provide shelters here in Israel. But I thought that was telling. Thank God there are shelters here. Thank God that there are people around the world, okay, communities, Jewish communities, Christian communities, people who understand that our prayers have hands and feet and want to be able to do something tangible, and I'll even use the pun, concrete, in order to literally do something to help, not just sit by and watch the news and feel horrible about the reporting and the bashing against Israel and feeling bad for what's going on, but actually saying we want to be partners in protecting lives in Israel. And in a sense, that's been our role. So I say, thank God for the shelters. Thank God for the people who have been stakeholders with us in protecting and saving lives.
Do all Israelis have bomb shelters?
No. As a matter of fact, the report from the comptroller of Israel came out a month ago and said that a third of the country, that's approximately 3.2 million Israelis, do not have access to bomb shelters. And that's an important word, the word access, because what that means is not only do they not have a personal bomb shelter in their house, as I do here or at my office, where we have a shelter for the office complex, it means they can't even get to a public shelter in the amount of time necessary. Okay? So that's 3.2 million Israelis, okay, right across the board. So a third of the country don't have access. So, we've been trying our part. Lifeshield over the last 20 years has placed over 1,000 shelters. That's a lot of, if you think about it, those are 1,000 shelters that are used by many people. Some of these shelters, by the way, when I'm saying 1,000 shelters, it could be real small little shelters that are enough for, say, a few homes, right? Let's say about 15 people get together into a small shelter. The more likely they're shelters of the size that you can get about 30 people into. That's generally the case of the above ground accessible shelters. But let's not forget, we've renovated hundreds of underground bomb shelters that can hold between 100 to 200 people each shelter. So now when we talk about, right, 1,000, now we're beginning to understand that has an impact on tens of thousands of people over time and time and time again. So we've done our part. Jerusalem Post, in an op-ed by Sherwin Pomerantz just last week, pointed out that Lifeshield is the lead NGO providing shelters, and it was the lead non-government organization providing shelters in Israel. So we're both honored and humbled by that role. There's a lot more to do. There's a lot more to do. We hear about all the people that don't have shelters. We're hearing about elderly people who can't make it to the shelter on time. I just got a request recently from a friend of someone. He was born with polio, and so he walks with assistance. They don't have a shelter in their home. They can't get to their neighbor's shelter in time, and him and his wife literally sit in the hallway of their home, which they hope is the strongest place, and pray. So that's what's going on.
I've noticed on the way to Jerusalem on Hebron Road, they're doing the construction for the new tram that's coming in, and yet they have bomb shelters that have been placed on the side of the road for the construction workers. So everybody needs a shelter, you think, when you're working on the road, but you've got you can't just run to the nearest place. Yeah, everyone needs a shelter, don't they?
Everyone needs a shelter. What we have found is that, look, we've had a really good success rate when it came to the rockets, right? Especially coming from Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah coming from Lebanon. We found that the Iron Dome, for example, right, which is the anti-missile interceptor, worked beautifully. It had a good 85% success rate. Excellent. The only problem is, what do you do about the other 15%? I don't know about you, but Paul, if I got onto an airplane and the pilot said, "Welcome aboard," the airplane, just want to let you know, we have about an 85% chance of landing safely and a 15% chance of exploding in a fireball. I'm taking the boat. Okay, I'm going by boat. You understand? That 15%. And the other thing is that even with the 85% success rate, when the Israeli Iron Dome missile intercepts the Hezbollah or the Hamas rocket, all that shrapnel and all that debris is raining down and falling down on whatever's below. And if that's a house, a community, a daycare center, whatever, that you need protection. What we have with the missiles, the ballistic missiles coming from Iran, are what's called David Sling. That's not Iron Dome. Iron Dome is not involved in that. And David Sling is literally an interception system taking place in orbit. Like, it's literally happening in the suborbit. It's taking place in space. Absolutely incredible stuff. So these rockets are literally exploding in space, which means that, yes, the success rate's very high. It's something like 90%. Again, very, very high, lovely. But you've got pieces of, you've probably seen the pictures. You've got pieces of that ballistic missile the size of a car. It looks like a silo from a farm, literally dropping out of outer space directly onto whatever is below it. So even with the success rate, we have to keep in mind that all that shrapnel, all that's happening. And now Iran has been doing something which is really, really very, very evil. And they have these scatter bombs. So you've got a ballistic missile coming in, again, the size of a farm silo, comes over. All right, we have to, listen, you got to intercept that thing, because that thing could take out like several apartment buildings. You intercept it, and then what happens is you got these scatter bombs. You've got about 20 rockets that then fall away from it.
After the Iron Dome has hit that rocket, does it then scatter?
Yeah, exactly. Well, not the Iron Dome, the David Sling. So the David Sling interceptor has intercepted in space. Now this thing has exploded. The body of the ballistic missile now drops. So you got something the size of like a van or a car dropping from outer space. And you've got 20 scattered rockets now going in all different directions. You see the videos of these things. They're lightweight. They're coming from such a difference. They even come in this swirl. It's very spooky. They're coming in a swirl. The wind is picking it up. It's crazy. You don't know where they're going to land. We can't touch them. We can't even knock them out. And those are extremely, extremely dangerous. You don't know where they're going to land. And by the way, they are completely illegal according to the Geneva Convention, completely illegal against the UN. By the way, did you hear the UN condemnation against Iran about that last week?
No.
No, because it didn't happen. It didn't happen. The UN seems to have forgotten that one of the worst war crimes that you can commit, okay, of scatter bombs, they've gone silent on this. I just say that as a point of reference.
Do we know how many rockets have came over so far into Israel from Iran in this recent conflict? I guess it's hard to tell because every day they're firing.
So it's really interesting because we're having approximately, it could be it depends on the day it is. Last week we had a big day where there was something like 30 that came over. Generally, we're looking at about 10 on a daily basis. It could be less. It's much less than what we had during the 12-day Iranian campaign back in June of 2025. There they were launching 100 at a time. But we also had a lot of assistance. You had the United States, you had Jordan, you had the UK, you had France, you had a whole lot of other countries involved in going after those 100 at a time. It was quite spectacular, and no question in my mind, nothing less than a miracle of God. Nothing less. Okay, you had weapons, you had interceptors that had never, ever been tested. This was their beta testing, real time. Okay, so that was going on then. Now, what we're seeing, and it may be a factor of the depleted resources and firepower of Iran, you now have much less, because I think they also realize, hey, it's no big deal. We can send over 1, 2, 5, 10 ballistic missiles and still send millions of Israelis running to bomb shelters. You see? So they're kind of saying, if we were to send 100 rockets in one shot, we very well could deplete our resources until, our armory, until we replenish, right? So let's kind of spread it out and just cause a lot of sleepless nights and stress for Israelis.
How long does it take for a rocket to be launched from Iran to get to Israel?
About 15 minutes. In other words, from the time that you have that warning, it goes off. It's about 10 minutes, and 10 to 15 minutes. And what happens is that it gets launched. Of course, we're detecting everything. When the Iranian campaign started about, I guess it would be now 3.5 weeks ago, what would happen is the entire country would actually get a warning that there's going to be a siren, right? In other words, which is fantastic. It would give you a 10-minute warning that basically warned everybody in the entire country, get near a bomb shelter. You don't necessarily need to go inside, but you may want to take care of certain things like go to the bathroom, make sure that you've got your kids, make sure that you've got everything that you need, because the next thing that you're going to hear is a siren giving you about a minute warning that you are about to have a ballistic missile crash into your dwelling. Okay, so that was what's happening. Now what we have is we have improved that so that it's by region. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, we're going to only give the region where we predict the hit will take place. They're going to get that advance warning, so the whole country doesn't have to freak out. And then you can now get ready. And then chances are that if you've got that pre-warning, chances are you're going to get the real siren. I mean, it's a pretty good chance. But the window of time has now changed. So instead of it being, say, 10 minutes, you now have about 5 minutes to get ready. So there's been pros and cons about that, but generally it's a really amazing thing if you think about it. Amazing. You actually get a warning before the actual siren. This is a new innovation.
Now, if a rocket is intercepted over Tel Aviv, can you hear the boom in places like Jerusalem in other parts of the country?
Oh, yeah, definitely. As a matter of fact, what you're hearing booms all the time.
Yeah. Because we hear booms here in Bethlehem. I'm just wondering, maybe there isn't a rocket over us in Bethlehem, but there may be something in Tel Aviv, and we're hearing the sky is.
Oh yeah, absolutely, rumbling. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right, and depending on where you are and how sound and what we're discovering, what we see is that what's called the hedef, which is the shock wave of these ballistic missiles, is quite huge. So you are going to hear, you're going to feel it. I know, for example, that there was the Iranians hit the old city of Jerusalem last week, right? For I think the third time, and they hit the old city of Jerusalem. And we have, when a member of my team lives several kilometers away, several miles away into Jerusalem, and windows were blown out, the car alarm systems went off, and that was quite a distance away. So that was pure shockwave. That's literally an invisible energy field that's literally reverberating. It can take out windows. It can actually cause internal damage. If you happen to be standing in the way of a shockwave, you could actually have internal organ disruption, because this shockwave is literally, it's like being punched by something very, very powerful, except It's invisible. It's crazy, right? Except we see the results because we see windows just bursting for no reason. No actual physical object hit those windows. Those car alarms went off. No one actually shook those cars physically. In other words, materially. So that's something to think about. So you're hearing that. You're also hearing the interceptions that are taking place. Even if it's happening in space, you're hearing other interceptions going on. There's a lot of noise happening here in Israel.
How many shelters have you distributed so far?
As I mentioned, we've done over 1,000. And in this particular campaign, so I would go back, I would say really it goes back to, if you look at 2023, October 7th, 2023, so we've done a few hundred. There was definitely a upward curve from October the 7th, 2023, where we were just busy day and night putting in shelters, moving shelters. That's also something we continue to be involved with. And that has to do with the fact that our shelters, which are mostly prefab shelters, come with, we always leave the hooking devices in them so that if they need to, they can be moved quite easily. So we've had situations where we've been told by the security chief of that particular area, this neighborhood, doesn't need that shelter anymore because of people have moved out of that area, or been evacuated, or we had a situation in northern Israel where Hezbollah blew up a school. Thank God none of the children were in there, but it would take quite a while for that school to be repaired again. So in the meantime, we took a very large shelter. We moved it to a synagogue that did need it. So we're moving shelters around. In the Gaza Belt area, after the 7th of October, right, you've had a lot of kibbutzim, a lot of communities that were attacked and completely destroyed, and the people, those survivors evacuated from those kibbutzim. Well, those shelters weren't required in the months and years after October 7th. So we went in and we relocated those shelters to other communities that did need them. So we've been doing a lot of that as well. It's really funny. I've never ever thought, when I was a kid, my brother and I used to play with, Tonka trucks and cranes and all that kind of stuff and pretend that I never thought as an adult I would be spending so much time with trucks and cranes.
How much does a bomb shelter cost?
It varies. It really, really varies. And so I can give you a wide spectrum. If we're talking about, first of all, what does it cost? Basically, shelters are supported by donors from all over the world. And anybody who wants to get involved and support and be involved, every dollar, every shekel, goes towards saving and protecting lives. So we have small shelters that start in the $21,000, $22,000 range, and they go up all the way to, for example, if we go into a large sports hall and we want to fortify one of the large rooms in there, that goes up, and that you're talking about much higher, and they can go up to 500,000 shekels or approximately $250,000. So there's a big wide range, but there's different ways of being part or sponsoring or partnering with us. Every dollar goes towards a shelter. So as soon as we have the funds, literally, I cobbled together for a bomb shelter, literally just before I got on the call with you, put together a bomb shelter for a rescue station in central Israel. And we cobbled together donations from Australia, New Zealand, and Alabama, United States. And we brought four different donors together, and we're able to order a shelter. On the other hand, we also have synagogues, churches, communities, families come together and say, we want our own shelter. We want to have a shelter after, named for, a loved one. We just had, for example, we just put in a beautiful shelter that was left in his will by a 100-year-old Holocaust survivor from Toronto, Canada, and left in his will that that's what he wanted to do. And today, his shelter is protecting and saving lives. And his name adorns that shelter. Every single shelter has dedication plaques on them with the name of the people who partnered with us.
So is this Jews and Christians working together to finance this?
We have that in some cases. For example, we have done this in many projects, especially some larger projects, where it does require bringing together different organizations, different groups of people. And it's an amazing thing. I'm thinking of a program that we did where we fortified a art therapy center. And it was a big project, Paul. It was a very, very big project because there are a lot of kids there. And the Army said, to the therapy school, you're going to have to close down because you don't have adequate shelter here, which was just a horrible idea that you would close down a therapy center for children. So we needed to raise a lot of money. We brought together 4 different groups, and 2 were Jewish and 2 were Christian. And it was a joy. It was a joy to be able to put 4 dedication plaques. Try to imagine like a checkerboard, right? Or like a hopscotch. 4 signs, all kind of together. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful sight to see that this was from a Jewish federation in the United States. And this was from a family, and this one was from this is from a Christian family, and this one was from another group. It was just amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
So we do that as well. We see that, and I think it's wonderful.
What is your website for people who'd like to know more about the work that you do?
Go to lifeshieldShelters.org, lifeshieldShelters.org.
And people can see the projects that you're doing there on your website.
They can see the projects, they can see what we're up to. There's an opportunity to make a donation safely and securely. There's different options on how to do that. There's also e-cards, e-greeting cards that you can actually send cards in memory of or in honor of somebody or for a birthday. And you can choose the image that you'd like. And that's a donation that also honors other people. So there's different opportunities. There's a way to contact us if you have any questions. So there's different ways. I also encourage people to follow our news sources. This is a big, big issue. Where do you get your news from? Where do people get their news from? We know that CNN, for example, is a mouthpiece for the Iranian government and for Hezbollah. We know this, right? And it's not me saying this. They say that. They literally, the correspondents for CNN, literally stand there and say, we're standing here in Lebanon with the permission of Hezbollah. Guess what? Everything they're going to say is going to be an anti-Israeli bias, and they're going to broadcast it to 50 million people watching CNN. So be warned, anybody watching CNN for their news source, you're getting total bias from Hezbollah or from the Iranian government. So where do you get your news source? You can go to, for example, to our Facebook page. You can follow us there at Operation Lifeshield. You can look at us. You can sign up on our WhatsApp news feed. And you can also sign up on the website for my weekly Israel briefing, which will focus on 1 or 2 projects and give you a sense of what's happening, not kind of like the big, big, huge picture, because I'm not an army general and I'm not a prime minister. I'm just a regular guy who talks to regular people. And I think people want to hear what those stories, those person on the street kind of stories are all about. So there's different ways of getting news. Our website has all of that.
Well, it's great to hear what you're doing, saving lives. So Shmuel, thank you very much for sharing today.
You're most welcome. Paul, I want to thank you for this opportunity and thank you for what you're doing. I need to just say this for those who are listening and watching this right now, and that is that it takes great courage and bravery to bring light and truth into the world. It's lacking, and there is great darkness. However, the moment you have one piece of light, one light that is radiating, you puncture the darkness. And Paul, you are puncturing that darkness. You're bringing light to the world. You're bringing light to everybody who's watching. And again, I wish you good health and strength in all that you're doing. And thank you. And God bless all those who are listening today.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us today. Pray that God will move by his mighty power in the Holy Land and bring his peace.